welcome to the Transatlantic Sports Show. I'm your host, Anthony Wootton. You can follow me on X at ARWootton, Wootton. And if you're watching on YouTube, as I always say, you'll see the details at the bottom of the screen there. You can also follow us on social media, both on Instagram and on X. We are at TASS_UK, the Transatlantic Sports Show. You're going to want to follow us over the next week at least, because we are accredited for the MLB London Series, which means we've got field access and plenty of great video content coming your way. So hit subscribe on our YouTube channel and also hit subscribe on your podcast provider, because we'll have plenty of great podcast baseball content coming your way over the next 7 days plus. And that's what we're getting excited about on this episode of the Transatlantic Sports Show. I'm going to be joined by Charles Walford of The Times, who was fortunate enough at the beginning of May to head out to New York and Philadelphia to cover the rivalry, the matchups between the two teams that are coming to London next week. That's right, the New York Mets and Philadelphia Phillies. So we're going to hear about Charles Walford's experience of MLB stateside before we get to experience over here UK side. So Charles's experiences from across the pond is coming up in just a moment, but also just to let you know of what's to come in the near future on the Transatlantic Sports Show. In the build up to the London Series games, we have got Mike Silva from the Talking Mets podcast to give us a preview and to educate us on the New York Mets ahead of that matchup. And of course, if you go to our back catalog, we have our interviews with Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer for the Philadelphia side of things. But for now, let's discover more about this rivalry and what it's like from a UK perspective. Here's my interview with Charles Walford of The Times. Hello, welcome back to the Transatlantic Sports Show. Thank you very much for subscribing. The YouTube numbers are going up, and quite a lot of you are keenly interested in the MLB London Series. And the good news is, there's just a week to go now until the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies take to the field at West Ham's London Stadium out there in Stratford. We've been treated to some great games in the previous two London Series, and it's all about the rivalries when it comes to London. The first one was the Red Sox and the Yankees. You may remember it was 6-all after the first innings back then in June, late June 2019. Then we had COVID, and finally the game that were promised in 2020 came last year when it was the Cubs and the Cardinals. This time around, as I said, it's the Philadelphia Phillies hosting their arch rivals, division rivals out there in the NL East, the New York Mets. And I'm joined by a man who has experienced firsthand this rivalry out there in the States this season. He was out at Citi Field in New York, well, actually in Queens. Well, obviously, it's one of the five boroughs of New York, but he was out there in Flushing to watch his Philadelphia Phillies team beat the New York Mets. And at that point, the Phillies were the first team in MLB this season to reach 30 wins. We're due for a treat when this Phillies side comes to London in next week. I was going to say later this month, but no, it's actually next week. Delighted to say that Charles Walford from The Times is here with us now to discuss and share his experience of MLB stateside as it comes across the pond to the UK. Charles, great to have you on the show, mate.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, let's go back to the start of May. Can't believe it was earlier in the month when you were out there. But like I said, you've experienced this rivalry firsthand. Just tell us what your experience was like of this matchup.
Well, interesting. We saw it was one of those where they played 4 nights in a row, but 2 were in New York and 2 were in Philadelphia. And the strength of the rivalry was kind of felt more keenly in Philadelphia, because there was a distinct sense of apathy at the New York Mets at the moment. They're struggling this season, and they couldn't quite muster the energy to even boo Philadelphia, which obviously, needless to say, once we were in Citizens Bank Park, it was slightly different.
Yeah, different breed of fans though out there in Philly, yeah.
There were in the concourse, there were a couple of Philadelphia fans who nearly came to blows simply because one was casting aspersions about some of the Mets players, and another fan just told him to shut up, to which he took great exception, and they sort of squared up to each other, and they are a breed, shall we say?
They certainly are a breed. Yeah, I mean, how big is this rivalry? I know it's a division rivalry. As I said at the top of the show there, that we seem to get these experiences of these division rivalries when it comes to the London series. But just how big is this one? I don't think it's on a level, is it? With all due respect to these two teams, as the Red Sox and Yankees, but that's a real historical rivalry that goes way back. But as far as the Mets and the Phillies are concerned, is there? I mean, you hinted at it there, and you said there's a bit of apathy with the Mets. They're well below 500 at time of recording. But did you get a sense that there is something there within this rivalry? That whether it's a New York Philadelphia thing or whether it goes a little bit deeper than that.
Well, I mean, it's not, as you say, it's not as passionate as the Red Sox Yankees. Simply, the Mets have only been around since the '60s as a team. But I think whenever there's that Philadelphia New York rivalry, there's that slight superiority complex that New York perhaps has, and perhaps a slight inferiority complex that Philadelphia has. But add to that, then you have two teams who play each other what used to be 18 times a season. Now it's down to, I think, 12 or 13. The division rivals play each other. But that's enough over the course of, a summer. You play those guys again and again and again. And I think the rivalry between the two cities, but I think the players certainly feel it too. Speaking to some of the guys out there, speaking to Daniel Murphy, former Mets second baseman, I think. Don't quote me on that. He was certainly like, we feel the apathy towards Philadelphia. That was echoed by Chase Utley, though he has history with the Mets from his time at the Dodgers, when they blamed him for breaking a player's leg when he slid in for second. But the players certainly just feel the rivalry, and they talk of the rivalry, and I think it's a nice, if you are playing 13 games against a team, it's nice to feel you've got an extra reason to win the game.
Yeah. Did you get a sense that both these teams are into this trip, this London trip? Are they excited for it? Because I know that you're out there obviously on a fact-finding mission, and you were telling this story and getting everybody this side of the pond ready for this game, just like we're doing now on the Transatlantic Sports Show podcast. But did you get a sense that both teams are properly into it?
Very much so. Yeah. All
Really?
the players are excited for it. Bryce Harper even said he'd wish it was a longer trip, a chance to bring more teams out, play a few more games, because it's they're in and out. They land on Friday morning, leave on, I imagine, Monday morning. It's it's in and out. And while we talked to some of the players, Francisco Lindor was keen. His wife and kids are big Harry Potter fans, so he's they're aware that they're stepping out of their comfort zone. They're coming to a new place where some of them haven't been before, and there is all that there's a whole sort of London tourist side and off, and I'm sure a lot of them would love to sample that. But they are aware, as many of them described it, it's a business trip. They've got to come here and get the job done. These guys, they're used to flying in and out of cities to play games, get the job done, and go. But you could tell there was just, for the guys who've not been to London before, even the guys who've perhaps been to London on holiday as students, just the chance to come and play here, and give that slightly different feeling to what would be just a run-of-the-mill mid-season game, I think is quite exciting for them.
Did you hear from any of the fans? You speak to any of the fans about their team? I guess the Philly fans in particular, their team giving up 2 home games against their rivals and bringing it thousands of miles away to play them at the London Stadium.
It's actually they're actually this year they've done it 1-1. So they're each giving up a home game.
Right.
Whereas previously it was, as you say, I think Boston gave up 2 home games.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't speak to any of the fans. I've spoken to UK fans who are helping to organise, bring groups of Philly fans over here, and I think the appetite's there. Philly fans travel well. When the Eagles came to Wembley in October 2018 to play the Jaguars, there are a lot of fans made the trip. It's 7 hours. It's not that drastically different to hopping on the plane and going to watch them play the Giants in San Francisco as they're doing these past 2 days. And so I think there's just chance to go watch a new ballpark, a new city. There's certainly an appetite there for it.
Yeah, what I gathered a couple of weeks ago, we spoke to Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's a sports reporter, and by the way, if you wanted to check that out, you can just go back through our catalog, the Transatlantic Sports Show. Just follow us and hit subscribe with your podcast provider, or on YouTube, just look up Transatlantic Sports Show or at TASS_UK. And Marcus had said as well, there's a sense of pride really with amongst Philly sports fans, like you mentioned there, with the Eagles when they came over in 2018. Of course, the Eagles are going to be hosting the first ever NFL game, regular season game in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, week 1 this year against the Green Bay Packers of all teams. And he said that the fans are really proud that it's their team that is going to be hosting that inaugural game in Brazil. And there's also a sense of pride that, hey, it's our Phillies out there in London, which is a pretty cool thing. So, like you, Charles, I know we meet and we chat, and that's how we've become acquainted, was through our coverage of the NFL, the London Series, the London games, the international games. Of course, we've been at Super Bowls as well, and we've spoken to fans of teams that have come over to London to compete in those respective NFL games. And it is, isn't it? It's a sense, and I guess it would be the same. Hey, don't quote me on the 39th step. We know the uproar that caused. But if that did happen, uproar aside, people would be proud. You'd be thinking, hey, I know you're a Middlesbrough fan. Let's say there's a championship football, and your Middlesbrough, my Blackburn Rovers go out to New York, and they're playing in New York. We'd be like, hey, that's our team out there. That's pretty cool. Look at Rovers playing out in Yankee Stadium or whatever. So it does bring a sense of local pride to those fans when they're watching their team. If they can't make the trip, they're going to be watching it. They'll be invested in it. It'll be an early game for them. But again, it'll be like, hey, that's our lot out there.
Well, I mean, of course, and it does help. You talk about giving up a home game, but when you've got 80 of them to play with, it's less important than it is to give up one of 8 in the NFL.
Yeah,
you're right. I think there is a certain sense of pride. It's Philadelphia is a prideful city, and so that sounds. I don't mean it in a sort of negative way. They take pride in their city. They take pride in their sports teams. It is their identity. So yeah, the Phillies are flying the flag in East London. They're all for it. Yeah.
So, I mean, this Philadelphia Phillies team, it's a special team, isn't it, that we're going to be getting over here. We both mentioned how bad a season or difficult a season the Mets are having, well below 500. But at the other end of the spectrum, the Phillies are flying high, and they've gone deep into playoffs in recent years as well. And you look at some of the lineups you mentioned there, Bryce Harper, one of the highest earners in global sport. He's literally a big hitter, but they got big hitters throughout their roster, haven't they? Throughout the lineup, this Phillies team. And the London Stadium really lends itself to runs. We're going to experience a lot of runs, but we're also going to experience a really special team that's coming out over here.
Yes, I mean, as you say, the last 2 years they've gone deep into the playoffs. But interesting, both times having had slow starts to the season, and then some June has come around, and they've really hit their stride and gone on great runs. Whereas this year, they've sort of dominated from the start. And I think they've had a couple of injuries. Trey Turner out now, and he's been out for a couple of weeks, and that's a big miss. But I think the crucial thing is they've kept a steady lineup. They've kept a core group of players, both on batting and the pitching side. And the youngsters have been able to step up into those gaps when, with Trey Turner goes down, Christian Pache comes up. These guys, they've all been performing well, but they have got, Kyle Schwarber at the top, top of the lineup. He's going to be, the day that the Phillies are facing the first pitch, don't be surprised if he swings as hard as he possibly can at that ball and tries to, send it into Westfield Shopping Centre. He's going to, they've got guys who do that. I mean, Alec Boehm is having a phenomenal season. He's a young lad. He's only 26, but you look at him. He plays third base. He's great there. He makes diving catches. He stops everything. He's a massive guy. Got a great reach, long levers, and he can hit the ball such a long way. So you got him, but even players of up until about 3 days ago, had you asked me about Nick Castellanos, I'd say, struggling. But
Mm.
he's gone out to San Francisco. Maybe he's enjoyed the warm weather out there, and he's had a great couple of nights. And when the Phillies were they lost 3 on the trot, I think it was maybe 4, but suddenly they've won 2, and things are looking good. And everyone's just been stepping up when they've needed to.
You mentioned warm weather there. Traditionally, in the London Series games, we do get scorching weather. So, fingers crossed, this weather's going to turn and we're going to have a decent weekend next weekend. I still can't believe that we're just one weekend away now from the MLB London Series out there at Stratford, next to Westfield, the London Stadium, West Ham's London Stadium, Stratford next week, June 8th and 9th. Tickets are still available, by the way. You can check them out on Ticketmaster if you're watching and listening to this. And you're like, actually, you know what? I want to check that out. And you got baseball right in your doorstep. You're gonna have 2 teams with hitters, and like we said, there's going to be runs there. It's not going to be. I don't expect a 1-0 or a 2-1 or a low scoring game like that. Expect runs, especially from the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't want to discredit the New York Mets because they are an MLB franchise. Were there players there that caught your eye that we can get excited about seeing up close and firsthand?
Absolutely. I mean, these guys, they were a 100-win team 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same. They've got Pete Alonso at the top of the inning. He can hit a big ball. He's a good player. Francisco Lindor, he's a lovely player to watch. Great at shortstop as well. I was watching him. Sorry to digress, but I was watching him in fielding practice, and
Mm.
the whip on his arm. He get the ball, just sets himself. There's no rotation, just the whip on his arm. Quite unbelievable throw. Just an unbelievable athlete, and a lovely guy, by the way. Massive Harry Potter fan, as I said, but lovely guy. But they have guys who can produce. And there's obviously something a bit wrong in the franchise. I don't know if you saw the furor with what's he called, Jorge Lopez, their
Yeah.
pitcher.
Yeah.
Throwing his glove into the field. They've blown some leads. Even when we were out there, Edwin Diaz had a bad night, and he then did against the Marlins his next outing the following weekend. So they're a good team. It's just not, for whatever reason, working for them at the moment. And Carlos Mendoza is working hard to put it right, and I think he will get them right. But this is professional sport. It's fine margins, and I think of the games that I saw, they weren't, apart from when Aaron Nola pitched a great game in the Tuesday lunchtime game, who won 4-0. They were games that could have gone either way. And I say by
Mm.
rights, that Monday night game had Edwin Diaz performed as he can, to his all-star potential, the Mets would have won that game, by a couple of runs. So you feel that they're not far off, but it's, for whatever reason, it's just not going for them at the moment.
You never know. This trip could do them wonders as a team. Not to put anything against your Phillies team. You're there wearing your Phillies jersey as well. So look, I don't want to put a hoodoo on your team. And if it does happen, then please don't blame me, Charles. But look, there's plenty to be excited about. It's professional sports, American sport, and there's something special about baseball and the whole occasion, and the fact that we can witness it over here on our shores is spectacular, and they always live up to the expectations, the London Series games, each and every time that they come around here. And I think we'll be due for another treat and a great spectacle next weekend when the Mets and the Phillies come over. I mean, Charles, you cover a lot of NFL, like I mentioned, that's how we've met. As a sports fan, what did you get from baseball going to MLB games? I'm going to say an MLB game, but you went to multiple MLB games and multiple stadiums. But as a fan, the whole fan experience, what did you garner from it?
I mean, they just do sports sort of provide for the fans on a different level than they do in England. But that's just the culture of it. You go to a football, a soccer match, and you don't want to miss a minute of the action. So that's
Yeah.
the fact that you can't buy all these sort of food options and drink options. That's fine, because that's not what the occasion is. But I think with baseball, I think you've got I think the key is not to go expecting there to be lots of runs. In my sort of baseball fandom, quite a sort of key switch that sort of flicked was when you realise it's not a game of hitting, it's a game of pitching.
Mm.
And when the pitcher's on song, even the best bats are going to struggle to get that. So and it's wonderful when the bats are hot and the ball's flying to the fence. But just the nuance of the pitching is a thing to behold. And as I say, when we saw Aaron Nola, and you sort of get to the fifth inning, and suddenly you're like, hang on, this he's not had a hit yet. Are we on for a no hitter? Sure enough, it goes quite quickly, and no hitters are rare. But I think just if you don't go expecting fireworks, but go just realizing that actually, if there aren't fireworks, it's because you're watching a guy at the top of his game throwing that ball and in absolute control of it. As a sports fan, just you can appreciate that as I think as much as the big hitting.
And reasons for people to be excited, those who are lucky enough to have tickets for next week.
Phillies, you're watching the best team in baseball.
I love it. Brilliant. And finally, Charles, whilst we got you, where can people go and check out your wonderful work?
thetimes.co.uk. Search for Charles Walford. You'll find my takes on various things, including a write-up of my trip and my attempts to eat lots of hot dogs that were slightly derailed by eating lots of other food instead.
Fantastic. It's all about the food, my man. I mean, absolutely. We are pulling back the curtain as sports journalists. We are often treated to some fine delicacies, and yeah, you know what, we put the elasticated waistband on when we go and do these things, but that's giving away some of the tricks of the trade. But yeah, Charles, thanks a lot. You know what, it's great to have you on. Enjoy the London Series. I know you won't be able to attend those games, so I know that you'll be watching from the comfort of your armchair or from the office, but yeah, enjoy the games. I mean, they're going to be great fun, but great to have you on, mate.
Brilliant. Cheers, Anthony. Thanks very much.
There goes Charles Walford from the Times. My thanks to him. Make sure you check out the piece that he wrote about his experience out there in New York and Philadelphia covering the Mets and the Phillies. And we're going to witness this NL East rivalry firsthand in just a week's time. Cannot wait for the game at the London Stadium. We are accredited, so we're going to be there. So please follow us on social media at TASS_UK. We get field access. We're going to give you full flavor of the games when they're over here. So that's going to be interviews with players, fan color, field access, like I said, stadium color, everything connected. If you can't make it to the games, or even if you want to relive those games, you can soak it all up through our social channels. And of course, I am at Wootton on X. Speaking of the MLB London Series, our episode early next week, so you're going to want to hit subscribe to our YouTube channel and your podcast provider, the Transatlantic Sports Show. We got Mike Silver from the Talking Mets podcast, who's going to give us a little more insight into the Mets side of things. Of course, we had our interview with Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer just a couple of weeks ago, so you can check that out just to get you, well, tell you everything that you need to know about the Mets. And of course, we've given you everything that you need to know about the Phillies. So when you are sat there with your family and friends, you can boast and they'll be like, where'd you get that information? You can say, well, I got it from the Transatlantic Sports Show. You want to check them out on social media at TASS_UK, and also watch them on YouTube. So until next time.